Hi, welcome back to Faces of Parkinson's. I'm your host, Robert Cochran, and I'm joined this morning by Bill Bucklew. Bill, how are you?
Hi, Robert. I'm doing great.
So, Bill, I think some people know your story. You've certainly garnered some good media response over the last couple months, but not nearly enough, I think, for either one of us. We want to spread it further. Give me the nutshell version of why people might know about you, and then we're going to dive into it.
Yeah, sure. So, right after Thanksgiving, I hopped on the pier at Tybee Island, Georgia, and started a truck across the United States to San Diego to raise awareness and funding for research into Parkinson's disease. And wow, it was a wild adventure, lots of twists and turns and great connections. And we had a lot of great media coverage along the way as well.
So just to put a couple fine points on this, and you tell me if I get anything wrong, you walked across the country. You did it in 61 days?
67 days.
67 days walking across the country, 2,500 miles?
Yeah, it was supposed to be 2,503 miles, and a few twists and turns and mistakes and everything else. I was 2,594.
2,594, great, and every mile counts, so make sure you get every one of them. And you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's for 6 years?
Yeah, I was diagnosed exactly in 2012. Right?
Okay, and further, your father also has Parkinson's, or is he still with us?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I actually had significant symptoms going back to 2005 and went misdiagnosed for 7 years. That's a whole story in and of itself. But then in 2015, three years after I was diagnosed, I actually started noticing some symptoms in my father earlier than that, and kind of pushed him to go in, and he was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2015 after me. And we also believe my grandfather had it. So. But he was one of those tough old salts who just wouldn't go to the doctor no matter what. So we don't really know.
Now, have you done any research or work with 23andMe, the genetic company?
Yes, both my parents have taken that, so we have all those results back. And wow, what an amazing ride that has been in and of itself. I have so many stories of that. We could spend a half hour talking about that. But
okay.
Everything I knew was wrong about my past, and yeah, really, really interesting.
Well, that's great. I've got a good connection with them. I actually spoke at their facility back in December, and still trying to do work with Ann Wojcicki. The CEO, is doing wonderful stuff for Parkinson's and genetics. So we'll save that for another time. But that's good to know you've got that work there. So I wanted to make sure. Okay, and let's get this particulars here. You are you're a husband and a father of 2 kids. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been married. It's going to be my 20th anniversary this year, and I've got a daughter who's going into high school, so in the fall. So wish me luck on that. And I've got a son who's in 6th grade, whose 12th birthday is actually this Sunday.
And you also do a little work with Pampered Chef. Is that your main job?
That is correct. Yeah. So I lead the product development, supply chain, logistics, and global supply base for Pampered Chef, which is, for those who don't know, it's a American cookware company, and we make household items for the kitchen to help you cook with your family more effectively.
I just went to a Pampered Chef party about 3 weeks ago. We had a fantastic time, and
Really?
oh yeah, no, it was great. Me and my wife my wife's Italian, and so believe me, we're all about it. And we both love to cook. I also learned at the party, though, from talking to the host, that Pampered Chef as a company does some funding of Parkinson's, or is interested in Is there a connection there?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. The company, first off, was extremely supportive. So I took, obviously 2.5 months off of work, which they allowed me to do. The CEO was really gracious in doing that. And then I had some of our consultants meeting me in almost every state, and came out to support me and walk with me. They did fundraisers for me. People are doing shows to raise funds. And they actually had an online group that formed, about 40 different consultants that were walking every day with me in spirit online, trying to put up the same number of miles that I was putting up collectively. So just across the board, there's been a ton of engagement from the team there, and we've gotten not only donations, but I got a lot of emotional support out of it as well.
That's fantastic. Pampered Chef, again, from a consumer standpoint, love what they're about. I love it from an economic standpoint of the opportunity it gives people to do that kind of work. And just from a social aspect, I love getting together over food, and the products I thought were great. So there's the plug for Pampered Chef.
I love it. You and I sound very similar. So,
well, that's good. So we also have we do have a lot of similarities in that regard, and others. I did a cross country trip on a bike. Now that's not by foot, but I have some feel for this. And our trip, we rode, it was a general health awareness tour back in about 2005. So I understand some of what you went through, and from a physical standpoint, before you were diagnosed with Parkinson's, you have a history as an athlete. Tell me a little bit about that before Parkinson's, the things you've done. Quite impressive.
Yeah, I was one. It actually started in like my freshman year in high school. I actually picked up a windsurf board down in Florida and started windsurfing. And I realized that for me, I was most interested in kind of pushing myself into learning new things. So I actually challenged myself to learn something new every year in kind of that adventure sports area. So I did everything from a full Ironman to climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, climbing Mount Rainier, to numerous triathlons. I've done 12 marathons. I learned to sail, and I was a competitive sailor. And there's a lot of other things too. I ran with the Bulls in Spain, and so every year I really tried to push my boundaries. And what I learned through that is, in a number of those events, is people throughout the history would tell me, and people in positions of expertise would say, "Oh, you're not going to be able to do the full Ironman because you can't train enough, right? Or you're not going to be able to do 5 marathons in a year. You're working, you can't do that." And every time I've really tried to do these things, I've ended up doing them. Now, I'm not breaking world records for marathons or anything else, but I'm completing them. And what I've learned is that I haven't found my boundary yet, and that people can do a lot more than they think they can, me in particular. And I've really gotten a lot of depth out of life in doing that. And that's also one of the impetuses for leading up to why I did this walk.